Okay, we up on coffee.
If they ready, they mouth. If they looking for trouble, ran right up in the knowledge. Now they packing a huddle. Now they know we can fight. Content give it every week. Me and your shit mine. Keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we hit. And they know we ain't quit. Yo, shit might be genius. Keep on bringing the giving. Unity, unity, unity. Cause they know we ain't stopping. And they know they got problems. And they ran out of options. If we know we got a problem, can't let it go unsolved. Bang baseline, Afrocentric issue, we seen the bar. Karma is karma. I say what I say, I hear the wall. Till I see y'all fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my Clyde winners. Clyde winners, 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 divine winners, Clyde winners, Clyde winners, Clyde winners. I'm with you, ride with you. Master teacher, create master, Clyde winners. Give respect to the elder, Clyde winners. Hi, somebody out there looking for me. Yeah. Told me somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me.
I'm not.
I'm not fornicating with fornicating. I'm not causing anyone to weep. I'm not dissembled. I'm not transgressed. I'm not discussed secrets. I have brought no lawsuit. I'm not transgressed the law. I'm not denied. Is that what I'm talking about? I'm not made extolling. I'm not proud. I'm not cursed. I'm not defiled. I'm not confounded truth. I'm not cursed to God.
Somebody out there looking for me.
Dr. Winters has illustrated that Africans have been settling the New World and building new civilizations and cultures in the Americas and around the world for the past 100,000 years. Dr. Winters has published and written numerous anthropological, linguistics, education, and population genetics articles. Many of these articles have appeared in peer-reviewed journals and online. His work has appeared in the Journal of Black Studies, Afrohistorique, Journal of African Civilization, Adolescence, International Review of Education, Thresholds in Education, TC Record, Bioessays, International Journal of Human Genetics, and PLOS Genetics, to name a few. He has published over 40 books, including Atlantis in Mexico, The Mande in the Ancient Americas, We Are Not Just Africans, and African Empires in Ancient America. For more of Dr. Clyde Winters, check out Yoshima Gumroad page, and that will lead you to the master himself, Dr. Clyde Winters.
You know, family, this is not cooperating. On my end, I can see the video, and yet you guys couldn't see the video. This is very frustrating, very frustrating. You know, because the thing is, I wanted you to see that video because that video opens up the door. How you doing, Dayon Epps, Doravale, Yoshima? What up, though? Joan, Cormonte, Teresa Miller. How you guys doing? Well, today I have a treat for you. And this treat is we're going to It's being. I want you to meet a professor, and she's a real true teacher. She's out there teaching us the real thing, you know. And this is Bakhet Madara Satra, and as it says, she's like the sun. She's here in a sense to share with you, share with all of us, you know, what's happening to the people, you know, because see, a lot of times we think we like to believe, in a sense that everything is cool, you know. You know, a lot of things, whenever you want to start talking about private things that affect the family, then people say, shut up, be quiet, don't talk about it, don't let the white folks know, you know, keep it in the family. But sometimes some things don't need to be in the family. Some things need to be, some things need to be discussed. Some things, in a sense, need to be given its full manifestation. And what I mean by that is that it should be given its full manifestation, and you should really know everything that's going on, you know. Because see, this whole idea of hiding stuff, it doesn't work out, family. It doesn't work out. How you doing, TW? You know, because see, we like to believe, and you know, people tell you, "Oh, white folks know us more than we know ourselves." No, they don't. They don't know it. That's one of their myths. That's one of their myths. They continually tell you that they're everything. They want you to believe that you have no agency. We do have agency. You do have control over your life. That's one of the reasons why we can't have good researchers. We don't have good movies because these people, a lot of people with the money, they think it's a white man in the closet. They think it's a white man under the steps. They think it's a white man behind their chair. They think it's a white man sitting right next to them. And they monitor themselves. And most white people, they don't care what you do. White people love white people. And since white people love white people, therefore, they're very happy in a sense.
Mhm.
They are very happy to be supportive of their people. But today we have Bakhet Sadra, our sunshine, you know, and you know, she's going to do a presentation today that is going to really help a lot of us out. How you doing, Cheryl? Software training and consulting services. What up, though? And you know, Cheryl Lynn and some of my other former students, they were kind enough to send me a very, including you know, Bakhet, they sent me a very beautiful artifact that's you know, and it's bling bling, and it's hieroglyphics, but it just warmed my heart because see, the thing is this is that sometimes when people do the little things, it's not the big things, it's the little things. When people do the little things that touch your heart, then it helps you to really be. It helps you in a sense to understand that the world is not cold, that the world is not everything. You know, they always say that hurt people. No, hurt people are hurted by assholes. These are people in the sense they're not. That's because they're hurt. That doesn't give you the right. That doesn't give you the entitlement to be able to treat somebody bad. It doesn't give you the right to look down on somebody else. My mama, she told me, she said, Clyde, you know, always love yourself, but respect everybody. You know, I used to have, before I started retiring, a lot of my kids would come to class, and I would say, you know, you got to respect them. My mama said, don't respect nobody, and unless in a sense, you know, they got to earn your respect. I said, that's a lie. Your mama lied to you. And don't go home and tell your mama that, but if you tell her, I would tell her that's a lie. Because the thing is this, is that you should give everybody respect until they earn your contempt. See, and I said, young people, try not to be like that. But anyway, Bakhet, why don't you tell the professor, tell them a little bit about yourself? Not everything.
Well, I love that. I'll take grassroots, Professor. But hey, family, Sherilyn, Baba, thank you so much for inviting me today. I am Bakhet Ma'at Sadra, and I am the author of The Black Mother Wound, a comedic-centered thought remedy. And it is a workbook of sorts, sort of a guide for the shadow work of the Black Mother Wound. And I'm really grateful to share what is my conclusion of the origins of the Black Mother Wound with you today. And I invite you to stop by the website. It's blackmotherwound.com. And also, I've arranged a download for all of the citations or the receipts, like Baba has taught me, for all of my conclusions in this in this presentation. So you can download the citations and links and the information that I use for this presentation at tinyurl.com/wound resources. And of course, check me out on Facebook, Instagram, all those good things, LinkedIn. But today we are going to talk about the origins of the Black mother wound, but briefly, just to share with you a little bit about what the book is about. The Black mother wound focuses on a Kemetic-centered thought remedy of active inventories, writing prompts, and ceremonies to recover the Black daughter's divine identity through self-honesty, self-knowledge, self-acceptance, and self-determination. And all of these I identify as spiritual assets that we have to go back to overstand in the present. And also you can download a free chapter of the Black Mother Wound, which is one of the inventories on the website. But the roots of the Black Mother Wound, they run deep, very deep. We can go back to the brutality of enslavement that tore families apart and shattered that sacred bond between mother and child. But really, the Black mother was the first collective thought idea that was recorded by the first people on this planet, our ancestors. And that idea was relationship, the relationship between us and the divine as a parent or a creator spirit. And we based our divine concepts on the most divine nature that we had encountered so far, which was the Black mother, who bled and didn't die and was able to create life. So you can see here on this slide that there is an overlay of the human body on the Temple of Amun at Karnak. And one of the things that I do in the book is I uncover the path to ascension, which basically is from consciousness diminishing, attitudes, behaviors, and conversations to move into a place of consciousness promotion and the attitudes, behaviors, and conversations that are related to promoting not only our own consciousness, but the consciousness of those around us, which include, Black daughters and Black sons, I'm pleased to find. So what I mean by Kemetic centered is that I use the term spiritual technology because, in my opinion, that's what our ancestors left behind for us, sort of a map or instructions to describe the journey that each of us takes to consciousness, to our highest consciousness or our highest vibration. And ultimately, I believe that there is nothing wrong with Black motherhood, but as our adept Rev Shock says, that something has happened to Black motherhood. And so I guide the process of trauma recovery and healing through the book, through self-reflection, and also look a little bit at what has happened to Black motherhood and how that shows up for us today. So today we're going to look at the origins of the Black mother wound. And I hope it's helpful because I see in the media today that a lot of Black trauma is being promoted as Black culture. And it's sort of become a niche advertising strategy. And part of that is the agenda to dismantle Black motherhood, that we've confused a lot of Black trauma for personality and Black culture. And let's see. Are the slides still? Oh, okay. Are they still showing? Did I?
We can show them whenever you want to go back to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you let me know. I was going to go ahead, or should we go ahead? Okay. So basically today we're going to talk about the origins of the Black mother wound, and it's going to be brief and it's an overview because the topic is huge and exhaustive, and it has a chronology that stretches back to the first interruption of the first people's society. So I chose to just highlight one aspect of the origin, and that is the worldview. So give me a second. Technology, come on. So in the beginning, the Tovan creator god is a self-created sky god that's called Amma, or in its masculine manifestation, Amo. And this self-created sky god created the world with the vibration of sacred words. So Ama or Amo mated with the earth goddess and produced the Nomo. And the Nomo are the primary focus of Dogon worship, our first people's ancestors that we're aware of. And the Nomo were bisexual beings that self-fertilized and produced the Dogon people. This is in their creation story. And that was basically the first trinity, or the first thought of a trinity of the first peoples. So their rituals celebrate the mutual respect for the genders and the principles that they represent. And gender doesn't exist the way that we see it today. But the Dogon believed that children came from the afterlife and that they were gods or reincarnated or resurrected ancestors who led profoundly spiritual lives and held extraordinary mystical powers that could be harnessed through ritual practice. And that ritual practice is what we consider education today. So this is where we get the idea of education for children. Um, and that education or ritual practice always sought to benefit the good of the community. So this is also where we see the seeds of the Ubuntu concept. Excuse me. So the story of the reincarnated or the resurrected God King, we can find this story among the Khoi and the San people as early as 2000 BCE. And throughout much of Africa, it was believed that coercion or domination or hitting a child could scare off their soul. And there were similar beliefs held by the Iroquois and the Hopi peoples in North America. So it wasn't that far out there. So this cosmic creative trinity is represented all throughout nature, including us. And the idea of the male as the sun, the female as the moon, and the child as the star is an Africological concept that Dr. Karenga explored in a fabulous book, Kawaida and the Questions of Life and Struggle. So he explains this concept of the sun, moon, and the star representing a fundamental African cosmology that's drawn from the Kemetic relationship with the stars, with the celestial bodies. And he tells us that the male is seen as the sun because he is the source of light and warmth and is associated with power and energy. And the female, the Black mother, on the other hand, is seen as the moon because she reflects the light of the sun and is associated with nurturing and emotional support of the rest of the cosmos or the children. So the relationship between the moon and the oceans links her to the water, the primordial waters, the womb, the Nile, the menstrual flow, all these aspects of ancient life. And she's always the counterpart or the core of the family system and the community for our ancestors. And the child is seen as the star because they're seen as the future and they represent the continuation of the Black family and the Black community. So there's no mention of any white ghosts, and the mother is not excluded from the father and the son because she's at the core of this system. And as the first divinity system, the Black African mother would go on to be found present in some form in populations of First Peoples all across the world. And most recently, it's been perverted by colonial settlers into the mythology of Mary. So following Ama and the Dogon theology or a belief system came Aset. And many of us already know the story, but just in case, real briefly, she was the first incarnate Madonna or God Queen. And she was the first Black single mother who immaculately conceived. And her counterpart, Asar, was killed by his younger brother, Set. And this is the basis of the Cain and Abel myth before she was able to get pregnant. So Asar, the God King, was brought back to life to regain his throne through his son Heru, which brings the Christian notion of resurrection and reincarnation into play, through the child, Jesus. So Aset became impregnated by her husband's spirit after he was already dead, and by speaking the sacred self-creating words. So we go back to the importance of self-creation and the vibration of speech. And these words were always believed to be the true name of God. And we see that also in the Christian belief system. But years later, the story of the God King and his divine son start to appear in other cultures without a Set or Ama. And that includes the Krishnas of India, Syria, Nepal, Mexico, Persia, all of them. And of course, Jesus Christ, the Hebraic folklore, is the latest that's been introduced. And the cult of the Virgin Mary originally entered the Greco-Roman world as worship of what they called the throne mother or the Queen of Heaven. So we definitely know where that concept came from. And here we have the lovely Venus of Wallendorf, and an article that tells us that the entire world, on all continents, the supreme being that was originally worshipped was the great Black Mama goddess. Human society first coalesced around the figure of the mother, and it was the Black African woman, the mother of humanity and the author of civilization, who founded the original cosmology and technology from which the world's religions and sciences developed. So you can see a list there of some of the ideas of science that are based on the principles and the aspects and the laws that are related to the original Black Mama goddess. And the world's present day religions, their mathematical sciences, astrology, astronomy, horology, chemistry, computer science, all of it is fragmentations and distortions of the original Black Mama science. And the Black Goddess mystery role was diminished across the board by Euro-patriarchal revisions that came to Africa with enslavement and colonialism. So there's a saying that I think it's the president of Kenya. He says that when the settlers came, we had land, they had the Bible. They said, let us pray. We closed our eyes, and when we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. So that's the basis for the interaction between our homeland and our ancestors. Some of us, our homeland and our ancestors, and what went on with the interrupters or the visitors, settlers. So in the first century, we have this gentleman, Diodorus Siculus, and he lived in the time of Julius Caesar and Augustus, and he traveled to Egypt in 60 BCE and came back to Rome and started seeding this image of the African continent and the people of the African continent. Specifically, it's interesting that there is a focus on African women or Black women and their place in society. And he tells his patrons that among private citizens, the husband, by terms of the marriage agreement, appertains to the wife, and it is stipulated between them that the man shall obey the woman in all things. So already, this is one of the earliest settler writings about Black women or African women that I'm aware of. And you could reasonably kind of conclude that at this point, the Black African woman is being identified as an obstacle to whatever the agenda is and what it is that the Roman Church intends to accomplish. I think that's a reasonable conclusion. So in the second century, we begin to see chaos erupt. There is the first major departure from the Black Mama goddess belief system, and that is in the Babylonian epic of creation. And at this time, people are starting to share written stories and the mnemonic tales of these exploits of war and conquering and chaos. So Enuma Elish celebrates the Babylonian god Marduk as the conqueror of chaos, which preceded the order of creation in this tale. So Marduk conquers Tiamat, which is representative of chaos, the female principle. She's called the dragon goddess of chaos. And at this time, it was extremely patriarchal and male dominated in this population, at least. And a woman's status, her role in society, it was determined by her relationship to men, whether she was a wife or a daughter or a concubine. So women had very limited opportunities during this time of upheaval. And there are some that think that the Genesis creation story was written during the Babylonian exile in the 6th century, and that the Israelites that were coming up with the Genesis creation story, that they were living under Babylonian rule. And Baba, you can affirm some of this when we speak, but this is the information that I've gathered. So in their creation myth, Marduk is depicted as a male deity, so we've got a definite gendered god. And Tiamat is depicted as a female deity, and it's communicated in a gendered way. And she's associated with chaos and creation and fertility. And in the story, she betrays Marduk, and she ultimately loses, but she becomes angry, and she betrays him. So this is the first introduction of transforming Aset into this character of Tiamat, and also associating her with Lilith, because in this story, they detail the Mesopotamian, goddess of fertility, Lilith, and they talk about her and her counterpart Samuel being rulers of a demonic underworld. So we see that introduction of that concept as well. So the only feminine perspectives here are either Tiamat and Lilith. So we're going to ascribe the characteristics of Asat to somebody. It just depends on that time and day, how people concluded what the message was. So now we have an image of the Black Mama Goddess as deceitful. She's untrustworthy. She's an enemy to her male counterpart. And she's also been associated with a demonic realm and motherhood and fertility all at the same time in one swoop with this literary tale. So then we move forward a little bit and we get to Christianity. And so around the 5th century or 6th century, depending on when you believe the Genesis story was written, we get this idea of what we see today as modern Christianity. So Adam is created first, and he's given dominion over the earth. Eve is created second, and she's created from Adam's rib. And women are being portrayed as secondary to men for the benefit of the patriarch at the time. That's really the only reason. Up to now, up until prior to Enuma Elish, gendering in terms of the hierarchy was somewhat foreign to African people. The theory also of the first rape is based on the mention of Lilith in Isaiah, which was Adam's first wife, according to Enuma Elish. And she refused to lie beneath him on her back. And her outrage escalated so much that she flew away and became a demon that took up residence in the Red Sea somewhere, and she devours children for revenge. So now the allegory, it kind of takes on a different view about what role Black women play in the Christian creation myth. Are we relating to the Eve story? Are we relating to the Lilith story? And at the time, what did society think of these stories? What conclusions did they come to? So next we get Judaism. And here we are in the 6th century. And a lot of the things are the same that we see in Christianity. God created Adam. Adam requests or invites the creation of Eve. Eve is created from the rib. She's created to assist or provide company to Adam, but instead betrays him. And the Hebrew word for Adam is decidedly a male or masculine word. And masculine pronouns are used all throughout the Torah. And then we move on to the 7th century and the patriarchy of that time. And in Islam, we see gratitude for the burden of motherhood. Now motherhood is finally starting to be described as a strain. We visited sort of a servitude or a punishment, a penile servitude in Christianity, in the Christian times, even in Enuma Elish. But now in Islam, there is a definite relationship between motherhood and strain or burden. And women are viewed as farms or gardens that have to be cultivated or sown and harvested. There's a lot of agricultural imagery that goes on. And then finally, we jump ahead a little bit to the 16th century. So now we start to really see the seeds of the concept of the great white mother. And she is decidedly fragile in comparison to the hardiness of the black mother. So even though the Portuguese had already landed, the Dutch account of the Gold Kingdom or Guinea was widely distributed throughout the 16th century to introduce Black motherhood or Black women and Black parenting to the masses of the non-melanated nations. So we see the settler's first introduction to Black motherhood, where he describes being with child when their time of deliverance and bringing forth of their child into the world cometh, when she is in labor, both men, women, maids, young men, and children run unto her, and she is most shameless in her manner of delivering before them all. When the child is born, she goes to the water to wash and make clean herself, not once dreaming of a month's lying in or making some references to white settler history, as women with us used to do. They use no nurses to help them when they lie in childbed, neither weak to lie dainty and soft, but they presently take a spoonful of oil and a handful of manignet or grain, whereof they make a drink and drink it up. The next day after, they go abroad in the streets and do their business as other women do. Many of these concepts led to the justifications for enslaving First Peoples. These were the types of writings and descriptions that were used to justify enslavement. So the idea of the Black woman not experiencing pain in childbirth, it's persisted from the 16th century to Serena Williams a few years ago. It's ongoing, it hasn't stopped. These are the foundations of the worldview that we've developed in proximity to. So 16th century, this is where I skip recounting the brutalities that were visited upon the Black female body in bondage. And I would comment instead a bit on colonialism and just let you know that destroying maternal kinship and the matrifocal connections that our ancestors had with nature and creation, that was necessary in order to come in and to rob indigenous people of their lands and their resources and to exploit their labor. The colonial armies, they sent missionaries to impose this foreign abstract of a father god who was the enemy of the cosmic Black mama goddess. And the Christians always spoke of this father and this son. And then the Muslims spoke of a male Allah and a male prophet. So this incursion or interruption, it had far-reaching effects on the cosmology and the relationships within the Black family, the Black community. So prior to this, father was a social rather than a biological role in the polyamorous relationships that were accepted at the time in many African communities. So the settlers came in, they redefined African Blackness, and the ways of our ancestors began to call them primitive and childlike so that they could perpetuate this view of themselves as saviors. And they promised our people a shiny palace of gold, which was called the Great White Father's House. And there was only one catch: you couldn't go there until you were dead. So I think that colonialism, and I'll take a step further, imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, I believe it's always viewed itself as a spiritual movement. And we have been distracted for a long time about the political clothes that it wears. But even today, at the core of the American political system are spiritual beliefs. And Black motherhood has always been the casualty of the spiritual beliefs of settler America. So as I said, I'm not necessarily going to revisit the insidious abuse of Black female bodies from the 16th to the 19th century, because there's plenty of it out there, and because I am one, so I don't have a desire to. But I will recommend that anybody that has the time check out The Untold Abuse of Black Female Slaves at the Hands of White Men, parts 1 and 2. And you can find this on the blackjournals.com or head over to their YouTube channel. It's well done, incredibly mindful and thorough. And I believe you can get a sense of the insidious environment within which Black femininity in the United States and Black motherhood in the United States were shaped. So at the time of the conquest of the First Peoples, the dominating concern with all of this new labor and resources was the prohibition of Black bodies and white bodies interacting. That became the focus. So the Black feminine body was consigned to being physical and sexual labor, and the white feminine body was exalted as holy or some sort of spiritual vessel through Christian piety. So this distinction is exactly what made mothering in the United States a political issue for white women. The idea of white men having mulatto children was a socioeconomic imperative in order for them to succeed. But white females mothering mulatto children was unacceptable, and that was a problem. And it's still a problem today. There's still more backlash about that than anything else. So much of the politics of abolition, they were founded in this appeal to great white motherhood, and this idea that emotionally and spiritually, mothering is this experience that transcends racial differences or racial abuses or transgressions, that every woman experiences motherhood in the same way, and that the great white mother is placed at the pinnacle of this experience at the time. So in the 18th and 19th centuries, the North American white settler took on the practice of stealing indigenous and African children and conscripting them to white mothers and their ideals in order to groom them to assimilate into settler society. So lots of kids were kidnapped, and we know this, and we see the aftermath of this in the reconciliation projects. That they were forcibly resettled with white women or white teachers, however they're referred to, and they were charged with grooming them. And all the appeals to a greater humanity to say we need to stop these practices or that they are transgressive, all of those appeals went to Queen Victoria. So they went to the Great White Mother. They went to the elite white settler women in the US. They went to the more powerful, or the women who were married to the more powerful men. But all of the appeals to stop the enslavement and the savagery, all of those appeals generally were directed at white motherhood. And then we see the 1800s. Almost there, Baba. We're almost there. Just a couple more. So during this time in the 18th century, this is when the printing press takes off. So now we have to deal with the media. The media starts to emerge in the US, and the trajectory of the Black African mother, she continues to conform to this destructive idea that promotes this narrative that motherhood is sort of the de facto dominion of white females. And policies are created and legislated, and strategies are developed, and there's royal agreement to build a society in this way with this belief system. So as printing and magazines and books take off, they start to find that their most profitable segment, their most profitable market segment is white women, especially white mothers. So white femininity takes center stage and becomes the ideal and a global commodity. And we see a really specific image of motherhood starting to emerge. The white mother is depicted without any allusions toward teaching, feeding, dressing, bathing, or healing children. She's completely disembodied. She's completely detached from any kind of labor. And that's literally and figuratively when we're talking about giving birth. And her motherhood is completely detached. She doesn't have stretch marks. She doesn't get leaking breasts. She's never washing a diaper. She's not going to clean up, vomit or poo. None of that. She's never pictured doing any of those things and never even thought of doing any of those things. And this aligns with the Christian narrative of Mary, who is this static image of perfect piety, perfect Christian piety, and this idea of emotional love. So she becomes cemented as virtue. And this is an element of the white settler worldview on Black motherhood. And this is where I estimate the fallacy of settler virtue, where it becomes part of this worldview. So the alliances that white settler women were a part of, they were based on this idea or this notion that if you were well educated and you were Christian and you were a white woman, you were also somehow victimized by this low sort of class, white trash, lower, different white people that you were forced to live in a system with, that you were somewhat victimized as well. This is only available, this position is only available in the US worldview or the white settler American worldview for white females. It's specifically reserved for white females, the idea of victimization. And it's that same belief, the seed of that belief, that supports the idea of white saviorism today. So this appeal to great humanity among settlers, it's always framed and directed toward the great white mother. And even today, a lot of the appeals for social change are directed toward white settler females. And it speaks to sort of the nature of the collective Black mother wound, that every Black woman, every Black family, Black son, Black husband, Black daughter, that all of us experience. And that is the worldview that divides all of us and our existence into subjects and objects. And this works really well for colonialism in the white settler worldview. However, we didn't come from that. So the idea that a mother is a subject and a child is the object, or that white motherhood is a subject and Black motherhood is an object, just that opposition and that duality of belief systems as a worldview is definitely the result of proximity to colonialism. So Grandmaster Taotao, which is somebody I listen to, he draws this analogy between this historical collective Black mother wound or Black mama goddess wound. He draws this analogy of our people being given a spoonful of sugar by settlers. And after we've eaten it and removed the empty spoon from our mouths, the settler comes back and tells us to believe that the spoon just ate our mouth. So that's the kind of perversion and distortion that's occurred around the Black mama goddess. And to address that, we can also admit that Europeans brutalized their own children for thousands of years before they ever came into contact with us. Mm-hmm. And there is plenty of proof of that. But despite this worldview, I would say to you that the Black African cosmic mother is still very much a part of each and every one of us, our community. She is at the core and the foundation of the very first idea of order among human beings. And she represents the completion of healing for generations, and teaching and nurturing. And her words are magnets to the patterns of manifestation that define people, human beings, our homes, our communities, our nation, the diaspora. All of those are formed through the words and the belief system of Black mothers. So in our past culture, the men were viewed as sort of openers of the womb or the way. And the social father was a vehicle for the child to be introduced to society, because the child stayed on the mother's hip for most of their development. But they were charged chiefly with protection, empowerment, and provision. But the child was never viewed as an object or property that was contended to carry on some kind of burden of ego or legacy or names or any of that. the way that children were regarded, it eliminated any kind of conflict about economic responsibility and this idea of child support and these things that we deal with today. None of this existed. And there was parity between male and female partners in terms of child rearing. So because of colonial religion, the media, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, all of these worldviews and creation myths share a responsibility for the belief systems that have really dismantled African intersubjectivity, or the relationships, the networks that we build that have the Black mama goddess or the Black mama at the core of it. And at the core of all of our relationships is absolutely our Black mothers and our own journeys. We can all relate to that, I believe. So this is the last slide, promise. But I would put it to all of you and your own experience. And this would be something interesting to discuss. But I found a sister who was writing about this delusion of subjects and objects in the worldview and how it's impacted Black motherhood and Black children, specifically Black mothers and daughters. And she said that Black people love their kids for sure, but historically, we've never had the luxury of thinking of our children as precious. Special, yes, but that's a big difference. We don't see our kids as anything akin to fine china that isn't to be disturbed or broken. In fact, given our druthers or preferences, most Black parents would choose to break their kids before someone else does. So I'd be really curious to hear about what the family thinks of that idea. And is that something you can relate to? And finally, I want to leave you with the words of our esteemed ancestor Tahuti, who told us that when the gods spake thus, God smiled and said, nature arise. And from this word, there came a marvel, feminine, possessed of perfect beauty, gazing at which the gods stood all amazed. And God the Father, with the name of nature, honored her and bade her to be prolific. So to all my sisters out there, I bid you to be prolific. If you'd like to get a copy of any of the receipts or the citations, head over to tinyurl.com/wound resources. Stop by my website, theblackmotherwound.com, and download a free chapter or check out the book if you would like. And also, I have a graffiti wall there where you can share your experience, strength, and hope, anonymously, of course. So let me know what you think about the idea that Black parents would prefer to break their children before someone else does, and how that resonates. Okay.
You know, this is fantastic. This is bellissimo, mamma, bellissimo, Italiano. Wait, stop it! You're making me speak Italiano. I don't know. It is so great.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you for inviting me.
But it is so important because see, you know, Creates Junior down Epps. How you guys doing, TW? You know, he wrote, after all these years of straining to belong, I see more and more second frequency women who rather be look Black, like racial dullers are so true. But this is the key thing, and this is what I think is very important, and this is what you've done, Professor. You see, Professor Bakhet, your research is fascinating. I'm still learning. You know, and this is something that we need to really think about. We need to really try to understand. Okay, question. Professor Bakhet and Dr. Winters, do you think the proliferation of free internet porn is designed to keep white females the standard of beauty globally?
Interesting. That is really interesting. I will say, I personally believe that the proliferation of porn through the internet and how easy it's become to get to see specialized fetish porn, I do believe that it is part of the new niche advertising strategy to push Black women toward interracial relationships. I do see that. I see that there is some feedback about how desirable it may be to see Black men with white women, or white men with Black women. I think that there may be something significant about that. What about you, Baba?
Well, I see porn in this way. I think that porn has always been successful. Porn was successful in encouraging women to become bisexual. You know, now
Oh,
because
okay.
remember, in many of the pornographic movies, for those people who look at those things, which I've never looked at, but in those films, they always had a woman on woman sex in every
Mhm,
scene. You see,
mhm,
we
mhm.
also know that a lot of research, you know, that they're putting in our food that, you know, like I love Cheerios, and I have to stop eating Cheerios now because they say they're putting in Cheerios now stuff to make you lose your masculinity, you
Oh,
know.
wow.
And I don't know if I hope nothing's happening to me. And then on top of that, and some of the porn today, people tell me that now they tell me that now in the porn, when they're showing supposed to be showing in the porn today black women twerking, now they're
Mhm.
showing transsexual
Yes,
men. And,
yes,
and so
yes.
then now if you look at the porn, I've heard that you don't just see, in a sense, the female, you see these so-called transgender
Mhm.
people, but they did
Yeah.
a study, and what they found, in a sense, is that many of our children are being, in a sense, many of our children are losing their ability to know who they are. A lot, especially in terms of females, a lot of females are
Yes.
thinking they're transgender, and it's got so bad now that some kids are beginning to think they're animals. This
I,
whole
I
idea,
saw that. I saw that. I identify as a cat or something, I think a girl said, and
yeah,
is fighting for the right to identify as a cat
because of
or dog.
transhumanism. See, transhumanism. What happened is that about 10 years ago, the psychologists, the psychologists, and the medical field, they began to want to create what they call transhumanism. And
Hmm.
in transhumanism, what they do in transhumanism is this: is that powerful information. You got that right. And see, in
Sure.
transhumanism, they want you to lose your identity. And the best
Mm.
way, in a sense, to create transhumanism is to destroy who? The female. Because see, the
The
feminine,
black mama goddess.
right?
Yes.
You had to get rid of the black mama goddess, because the
Yes, you
black
do.
mama goddess is about creativity. The
Yes.
black mama, in a sense, she creates it. She creates she creates, in a sense, life. So,
Hmm.
but the people, the transhumanists, they want to get rid of women. You have to understand. They want to
Yeah.
get rid of women because they feel they can make money
Hmm.
by making drugs to eliminate any type of gender feelings.
Hmm.
And most importantly, they want to take over creation. They want to take over procreation. They
That part, that part, Baba. Yes. If you notice through the entire presentation, theme or throughput idea is this idea of speaking and self creation and Kepara, the idea of creating oneself from oneself, that is the ultimate goal. And that was the secret that was contained in the true name of Ra, or the mystery system, that it was all about self creation. And I believe that that's what CERN is about. I believe that's what transhumanism about. I think this bid to be able to see the face of God in terms of being able to self-create oneself and kind of tell God, I don't need you. I think that is part of a push, maybe subconscious, maybe unconscious, maybe conscious.
it's a conscious thing, because see, every corporation worships a demon. But let's
I
get back to this
bet.
whole idea
I
of
bet.
transhumanism. See, in terms of transhumanism, the pharmaceuticals, they feel that they can make money if they're the ones who create the babies. See, they
Mhm.
want to have unproductive sex. If they can make these test tube babies, if they can, in a sense, be able, in a sense, to stop women from procreating, and they can take over that. See, they make a lot of money on giving these kids gender blockers. They make a
Mhm.
lot of money on that surgery when they rip off your penis, and then they create a hole, and they say it's a vagina, because the vagina, the so-called hole they give you, you have to always keep something to keep it open, because if you don't keep it open, it'll close because it's a hole. And then these women, they have their vaginas and everything taken away, and yet we can see, to get our kids confused. Sometimes a transgender man will get pregnant, And then in a sense, they'll make you think that men can have babies. You know, things have gotten so far that now some of the transgender people even say that a menstrual cycle does not make you a woman. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, none of this would be possible in the face or the presence of the Black Mama Goddess. If that belief system had survived or does survive, if we move that belief system back into our families and into our community, none of this is possible. All of it is in direct opposition to the Black Mama Goddess.
And that means taking control of the media, but that's a problem. You know,
Mm.
Create So Junior. What does he say? I used to work in media, porn advertising, magazines, etc. It's all a system to keep up the illusions of the second frequency execs up in those offices. I had to get out of there quick. Yes, because see, you know, look at so many people. I mean, you see these men when they get in their 50s, you know, like one of those the Kardashian guy, Ron Jenner. Jenner
Mhm.
was a deathlete or whatever. He was a
Uh,
man's man, and then later he wanted to become a woman. See,
mm,
always within, it seems as though among many Europeans, many Caucasians, many males have this desire to be to become a female. You find, you know, they said P. Diddy did it, but I know my father and other men would always talk about how sometimes white people would want to hire them to have sex with their wives,
mm,
so they could see this being performed. And so it's this whole idea, but it's kind of scary. See, you know, Professor Bakhet, what you've been talking about is very scary. And what makes
yeah.
it scary is when you go back and you wonder where this stuff came from.
Yeah.
I like Now listen to me. I love ancient history. When you read the Sumerian literature, the Sumerians said the man was created from the woman's rib.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
Okay.
and if you notice when you were talking about African religions, and all African religions, even when we go back to Kemet, we always see this interaction between a male female together. It's some
Mhm.
type of energy, male female energy. And
Yes.
so if the Sumerian literature said that man was created from the lady's rib, and that's understandable because what came first, the chicken or the egg? The egg. And who
The
carried the
egg,
egg?
the womb. Yes, the
And the
womb.
womb. See, because
Yes.
see, the womb is that special place. The womb is where we want to go back to. Mostly all of us, psychologically, many of us want to go back to that safe place. And they've done studies and they've talked to people. And as these people were born, and when they came, it was that tension coming from the womb. But also, you brought up another important thing, Professor. And what you brought up is this whole idea of this disassociation of the body. See,
Yes.
See, when the Caucasian came from the cave, he hated the body because the
Mhm.
body was just a utility. You know, to those Caucasians who left the caves, and they left the caves after the great Santorino volcano, which opened up a lot of cave entrances. And when they stormed out of the caves, they had been used to eating people. They had been
Yes.
used to seeing the body. They had been used to seeing the body as a utility. You could take their skin and you could make clothing from their skin.
Mhm.
You could take their skulls and you could make those to be eating instruments. You could use their bones to make tools.
Yep.
And so then
Yep.
that's one of the reasons why even today when you find some Europeans when they have sex, from what I've read, I don't know, some of them like to be choked when they
Mhm.
before they can have an orgasm, and
Mhm.
other strange things, or they want to go through a lot of beatings and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
so it seems as though they disassociate with the body. But then when we think about this whole idea, when we think about the black mama, the black mama was something that was very, very, very special. You see, and and
Yes.
and and could you talk more about that whole idea that that the first single mom? Could you talk more about that? You know, a lot
Yeah.
of young brothers, they don't want to deal with a single mom. You know.
Yeah, no, that's part of the agenda. It's part of the engineered consent, the manufactured consent that we have in our community to believe this idea of single Black motherhood as a blight on our community that's somehow responsible for whatever the ailments are. Again, with this idea that there's something wrong with Black people. But in fact, yes, Set was the first Black single mother. Mary was a single mother. All of our ontologies and cosmologies around most of the planet are based on the idea of single motherhood with absentee fathers, or a father that was in the spirit. Um, but there was no time to go into it, but I would love to maybe one day go into the Moynihan report. But specifically for us as foundational Black Americans in ADOS in the U.S., the Moynihan report that happened in '65 painted Black motherhood as a tangle of pathologies, and that is exact, quote unquote, a tangle of pathologies. So we get this idea that something's wrong with Black motherhood, something's wrong with the Black community. And they used statistics to explain that the blight of low income, low educated, all of the problems of the Black community, all of the crime, the violations, the low moral morale, all of those things were the direct result of the father not being in the home and single Black motherhood. And um, what what we know is that this is something that Baba teaches in his class. And I'll tell you, family, if you haven't taken the class, better try and get down. Figure out when it is, get in the class, do what you have to do. There's a distinction between the definition of the idea of a single mother. There is a divorced mother. There is a mother who is co-parenting, the child's father may not live in the home with them. There is the mother who lives with the father, but they're not married. There is the mother who is raising the child with the previous generations, the grandparents or the cousins or the extended family situations. When we talk about a single female in our vocabulary today, and what we mean by that, our lingua franca is this kind of this kind of idea that she's all alone, she is financially struggling, motherhood is a strain and a burden, she has no support system, she's relying on the welfare systems of the larger society. Moynihan painted this picture post failed integration that, in my opinion, only served to convince an entire generation of Black mothers that they should aspire to white settler female middle class status. And that was helped by the media and all of the images of the perfect white motherhood, Ozzie and Harriet, the Donna Reed show, all of these images next to the washing machine, the Wonder Bread, all of these media images, again, because their primary target audience is white females who have disposable income and who have time and leisure and who are not beset by violent environments or financial hardships. That is their primary target audience for the most part. So, in my opinion, this idea of single Black motherhood as a destructive force in our community, I believe that's a misdirection. I think the biggest outliers of poor childhood development, that they actually have a lot more to do with opportunity recognition, with access to resources, and the strength of a community's ability to control its supply channels, access to education that is based in accurate reckoning. There are a whole bunch of other outliers that can predict a child's poor outcome, including the ACEs, a child exposure to violence, a child exposure to domination. There are a lot of other indicators other than single Black motherhood. And it's just much more effective in terms of consumer buying power to keep proliferating this idea that somehow the Black community is failing or pathological because of the number of quote unquote single Black mothers.
Monahan was a liar. He was a liar because see, I lived during that time, and I was a teenager, and I was looking around the Black families, And yes, it was a lot of single moms, but they weren't really, their kids were not growing up in
Alone.
isolation. It was
Right.
uncles there, grandparents.
Right.
It was,
Grandparents.
and so a lot of times,
Miss Betty on the block.
right. And like TW said, black mothers are hard, smart as working humans on earth. No disrespect to James Brown. It's a man's world. That's bullshit. It's
Right
a
on.
world in which we create. See, we have to look at this. We have to look at this. Is that this whole idea is to lead us into nonsense. Joan Coromante says what? She says the push forward towards transhumanism is to rid of this nonsense. The Euro male has always had a disdain for females because she represents a mouth to feed. Very important. She's not lying. You gotta listen.
Yes.
Listen.
Yes.
It's the
In that
Sumerians.
cave.
It's the Sumerians and the Egyptians saw that it was men and women working together, and that it was the feminine and the masculine that led to the origin of mankind. What happened to this European? What happened to him that made this? And I'm going to tell you. We had to look at the gang. It was gang banging. But see, in the 60s, the Jesuit priests created the gangs that dominated the rest of the century. Let me explain to you. On the south side of Chicago, in an area that we call Inglewood, there was some Jesuit priests, and they helped create what we call the Black Disciples. In the Woodlawn area, there was a group of Jesuit priests who helped found the Blackstone Rangers. It was in the disciples. They created the colors of the blue. The Blackstone Rangers created the colors of the red. And see, what happened is that they also taught them about the 5-pointed stars. They taught them all this theology, because remember, in a sense, Hebrewism, all this bullish. They always got a star. They always got a nation. And then these people went out and they went across the nation. They began the Crips and the Bloods. What colors? Blue, black, and the red. And so, see, this was a diabolical plot. Do you know that during the inauguration of Nixon, the Blackstone Rangers were invited to the inauguration? And these people were killing people. They were killing people. You couldn't join these gangs back in the day. And so we see what Professor Bakhet is trying to explain to you, is that Professor Bakhet is trying to get you to understand is that it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. And that these Europeans, these second frequency people, they go through a process of creating madness, creating, in a sense, things that will bring us down. What does Create So Junior says? And this is something we need to think about. This is very important to understand. The true definition of madness, they personified it ever since their beginning in the caves, backwards in their relationships with nature and sex. Yes. And then a lot of people, family, when I showed you that statement, in a sense, from Joan, and Joan talked about a mouth to feed, you had to understand, in a sense, the Quran does not say that women should be silent. The Quran does not say that women should be in a sense manhandled, that women can be killed. True Hinduism. It doesn't say that when a man dies, his wife should go and burn herself up, and so she won't be a burden on the family.
Right.
You see?
Men did that. Patriarchy did that.
That's right. But let's look at these religions. I already told you. The Sumerian literature made it clear that woman was created first. Even you understood, even with Diodorus, when he said that it was the woman, in a sense, who was the master of the house. You see?
Yes.
And yet these nomadic people, once these nomadic people took control, you see, it in the way people are treated in Islam, it's not based on the Quran. It's based upon, in a sense, fiqh, and that means religious studies. And we find, in a sense, that the Wahhabis, the Hanafis, we find it whenever a religion goes to white people, the woman becomes the enemy. Whenever, yes, it does. Because see, remember, do you know a woman is not even worth having sex to the average white person? I mean, that's why they have sex with animals. Do you know? I saw a thing on Facebook where these men was at a brothel, and each one of them had a sheep in front of them, and they were going to copulate with the sheep, and yet they made this against the law. But see, you had to understand, family. You had to understand, family, is that they had to create a wound on our mothers. They had to create a wound on our mothers, so they could, in a sense, get us not to really love ourselves. You see, you know, and this is in a way partly true. TW says white women buy into their false elevation. You see them when they walk around with their noses in the air. I'm special. Some of them do. Most of them know they're a piece of shit.
That's the Karen phenomenon. Right. That's the Karen phenomenon, pushing back against this idea of this younger generation reclaiming their identity and knowing who they are and what they've come from. I see them hitting right up against that Karen phenomenon.
But see that, but the whole idea of feminism is the idea that we had to catch it. When I was growing up, my father always told me, he said that, see, the one good thing about the white man is that the white man had that checkbook, and that's how he can keep his woman in line. And this is very important because, see, my father didn't dominate the family. You know, they worked together. You see,
that's right.
But the home is the property of the mother. You know, right. I was married to my wife for 50 years. When my wife was alive, I better not leave a book in the living room. I better not leave a book in my bedroom. I better not leave a book in there. Now, she had her books. She had a big bookcase full of her books and shit. But I better not leave any of my books. If I left my book in that living room, or if I left my book in that bedroom, when I came home from work, I wouldn't see that book. And you know what? I wasn't going to ask her because I knew what she wanted me to do. She wanted me to ask me so she could scold me, so she could beat me, so she could hurt my feelings up.
Yeah, we got to pick up after ourselves.
Yes, but it's the home. But when you talk to many white women, they don't really trust their men. That's why in a sense, I think I saw this video on these on YouTube, and these white women talking about one of the reasons that they like black men is that the black men don't try to dominate them. The black men in a sense allow them to rule them, and it's kind of very interesting because if you notice those many black men in a sense who marry white women, they usually die young unless they divorce early. I mean, Mariah Carey, the rest of them, you don't see their fathers around, you see, because they died. And see, because there is something in that fluid inside of that white vagina that you should run away from. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm going too far.
Yeah, I think that I got nothing.
Professor Bakhet, why did you let me go there?
I got nothing. I'm just grateful to be a part of the family and to be above ground today. But I resonate with what you're saying, that we get hoodwinked, we get duped.
Yeah. You know, TW says there are many divorced white women. When they are poor, it's a sight to behold. However, they still think they are the ideal woman. Go figure. Yes, they do. And some of the out of shape ones think they're the ideal women because they had these brothers with these chains. I saw this. I remember when I was looking at Cardi B. Now, Cardi B, to me, she's a very beautiful woman. And the thing is this, and then they showed this girl. You see, they showed this girl that her husband was cheating on. And I'll tell anybody, ho. If a guy or a woman is a cheater, you see, then therefore that person is going to cheat. No matter what you do, they're going to cheat.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how good you look. It doesn't matter how ugly you think you are. It doesn't matter. He's a cheater. She's a cheater. And because he's a cheater, she's a cheater. But Joan, why did you write this? Why do you want to make me think? I don't want to think. She says, The disdain for black women is rooted in the Caucasian's hatred of God.
Oh,
Because
yes.
she
Yes,
represents
Val.
the power of nature.
Mhm,
That's why
mhm.
they're always trying to overpower nature. What do you think about that
Right.
statement?
I think that is 100, and I think that the the resistance of nature to the white settler will is something that they perceive as insolence. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of the caricatures of the black divine feminine are problematic around insolence. Insolence has always been um, the defining descriptor of black femininity. You're sassy, you're insolent. You're Jezebel, you're insolent. You talk back, you're insolent. You are heard and seen, you're insolent. I think that the way that the white settler encounters black femininity is very similar to the way that they encountered manifest destiny and this idea that they were going to go out and tame nature. They tended to look at nature as being insolent when it would not come under their control. And they write about it that way in their literature. The weather is insolent, the soil is insolent. Anything that they can't control and have dominion over or develop a parasitic relationship with is generally defined as insolent. And I think it's still a sort of a theme that we hear around disobedient blackness. It's always this idea of not coming into order or willingness to be controlled. So you're insolent.
Or it could even be a simple thing. You can be in a relationship with your partner, and you can just say, "Baby, baby, why don't you this? Now you're acting like my mama. Let's stop. Why won't you let me? Why won't you let me be my?" She just said, she just gave you a suggestion, but you're getting all upset. You're trying to say she's sassy, but all she's doing is making a suggestion. But see, that comes from the media, the propaganda. When I was growing up, in every car commercial, they had a man and they had the most beautiful, sexiest white woman you could find sitting beside her. And that made you feel that when you got your Cadillac,
It came with a white woman.
you had to have that white woman sitting beside you. And it's sad, it's very sad. But again, in a sense, it's so terrible. When you think about the Hindus, like Darlene X said, oh, right, your man dies. Why do you have to die with him? That's sick. No, it's not sick. It's economical. It's capitalism. Because she's a burden. Remember, the woman is supposed to always be a burden. You don't need
That's
a woman.
right.
I needed my wife. My wife made me very happy. And I think that a woman and a man, if they can become friends, you need each other. And yet, in a sense, they always teach you that you don't need a woman. You don't need a man. I don't need a man. I don't need a woman. I can do it all by myself. Yes, you can. You see, but the point is this: don't you want to have somebody to talk to? Don't you want to have somebody to relate to? Right now, in a sense, I'm not going to tell a lie. When I was younger, I loved being like a monkey and just have sex all the time. Woo! But some of the best times.
I'm not mad at you.
You got that right. I was viral. But anyway, but some of the best times is when you can talk to your mate, when you can talk to your partner, and y'all can have a good conversation about something. It doesn't have to be about nothing big. It doesn't have to be nothing about grandiose, but it's being able to share. It's being able to share and not be in confusion, because see, a lot of times we feel confused, and a lot of times that confusion can be left if you just talk it out. A lot of times you can work out a situation if you just talk it out. But what does TW say? She says second frequency are the masses of confusion. You see this daily on the job, in politics, in the economy, in healthcare, and war, sex, etc. Just like they play up these people. When I was teaching at Governor State University, I was a lecturer. Since I was a lecturer, then I got a yearly contract. So I was able to teach at Governor State for 10.5 years. What I noticed over the years is that, when I first started teaching, it was like when I first started teaching university, it was just like when I first started teaching in county jail. I always thought the white judges and the white men were so against black people. They want to keep them in jail. They want to keep them down. I found out that wasn't always true. So when I first started teaching, I said, wow, being a black man, it's pretty hard to be a professor. But look like the sisters have it easy. So then I was working. I worked, as I said, I
Ah,
worked with, yeah, as I said, I worked at Government State University for 10 and a half years. What I found is these people would act like, oh, they really love the sister. They really love the sister professor.
mhm.
But then when that 7th year came up and it was time to give her give her tenure, these people came out all type of bags. I said, damn, they was just
Mhm.
acting like they liked her. They was playing her up like she was the best thing since mayonnaise. I like mustard. But but then in a sense, they were just it was just I would say, what is this? And I started saying, no, these people do not. I'm going to tell you, and I say this every week, and I know you get tired of me saying this, but all you got to do is Google slavery, and a picture going to come up with a black woman getting her ass whooped. It's going to be, she's getting whipped. She's tied up.
Yes,
She's always being, because see,
yes.
they know that you are the mother goddess. They know that you are in a
Mhm.
sense, you give us the ability as men to be warriors or to be simps or to be transsexual. I don't know what the hell it is. But
Ashe,
see, but
ashe.
see, the whole point is this: is that you, as a woman, you give us that power because you bequeath that power to us. You see, I'm going to tell you guys something out there.
Mhm.
A lot of you guys who gave women babies, and then in a sense you didn't stick around, or you didn't want to be father, or you didn't want to support the mom, and you felt you were okay. When you treat that woman like that, when you treat your children like that, you got somebody hating you. And because there's somebody hating
Mm.
you, they don't want to hate you, but you're going to hate somebody who do you wrong. See, you tell these women, I can excuse you. No, I can't excuse you. But in a way, I can excuse you if you was at a bar and a woman was looking so good and you was a little tipsy. She said,
Oh,
"I love
no,
you.
no, 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 no.
I love
No,
you,"
big kid
and you have a
pants.
one night stand. What's
No, no,
wrong
no,
with
no, no.
that?
Big kid pants. Big kid pants. We all consequences. Consequences are real now. They're real.
You should be held accountable for that. Come on now.
Shoot. Yes,
But really,
yes,
though,
you
really,
you
really,
can.
you should be held accountable about that. Because one of my wife's friend, that's what she had. She had a daughter, and she met this guy that she knew in high school at a club. They had a one night stand. He
Mm,
never wanted to accept the baby, but then the baby grows up. And see, you know what I used to hate the most, Professor Bakhet?
mm.
What I used to hate the most,
What's
Bakhet,
that?
is to be a teacher and to have a kid tell you, I don't have a father because my mama don't tell me who
Mm.
my father was. That's terrible, you see, because
Wow.
you do have a
Yeah,
father.
yeah,
You
yeah.
see, you do have a father, but maybe they don't want to do it. And see, this is the whole thing. This is why they want us to be in this situation. This is why they've created this. It's not
Yeah.
what you've done to yourself, it's what's been done to you. You can't avoid
Yes.
that. No matter what, you can't
Ashe.
avoid that, you know.
And I would
But
add too that you part of the I'm sorry, Dr. Witness, go ahead.
no, I'm done.
Okay. I would add too that, there's so many aspects to the Black mother wound and the way that it's shown up in our community. So much pain out there with the millennial child free, the no children move. There's so many movements that are a direct result of the Black mother wound. But one of them that I think is it's critical is the idea that a woman might decide that she doesn't choose to partner with a man and raise a child with that man, but will deny the child access to their own story and believing that somehow, I don't choose that man, so he doesn't need to be involved with that child's life, or they don't need to know that person. um, I think that that's a big distortion in our community that is it's hurting a lot of us because I think we view the child story as belonging to us. We choose to believe that we have dominion over the child's story. We can choose what part of their story they have access to. But by doing that, when we talk about the importance of self knowledge, and Jehudi told us, all these guys reside in you, know thyself, and to ma'at be true, that this is the highest order of the first peoples, is that you know yourself. So the idea that we would keep a child from knowing their father or knowing their father's story or knowing their own complete story because of ego issues or I'm going to punish you or I don't like him or all those other things, that is a big portion of the Black mother wound that actually shows up in the ACEs. It shows up in an adverse childhood might be kept from a portion of who they are, their own
Yeah.
story.
And like
Yeah,
my
so it's trauma.
like one of my sisters, one of her daughters, her daughter, her daughter died, and she still says, "Who is my father?" I can't tell her because I was a kid. Nobody tell you nothing
Hmm.
when you're a kid, so you only know the
Hmm.
knowledge that people tell you. And when you're a kid, you're not always left. You're not always in those situations, and you can't help.
In the loop.
Yoshimad, he says they want animals. That's true. And then what does Darlene X add? I remember when I first heard they had sex with animals. I didn't believe it.
Hmm.
They why would anyone want to have sex with animals? It's sex with animals is to many people is very good because you know why? It's non-productive. It's non-productive. They do not want to. They do not see a woman to most Caucasians is not worth anything. To me, my wife was the
That's
most
true.
precious thing in my life. My
That's true.
mom, I loved her to death. My grandmother, oh
Hmm.
shit. My granny.
That's right.
Sorry to say, Granny's live up there over Mama, because Granny don't whoop your ass.
Uh,
Ugh.
that's
But the
right.
point is,
Shout
this
out
is
to
very, very important,
Granny.
you know. But you did say something too, and what you said is this: is that family, you guys out there in the audience, remember that question. Remember that question that
That's right.
Professor
Yeah.
Bakhet asked, and she said, you know, do we really feel we should break our own kids? I mean, what do you think? Those of you who had children, do you think that you should break your kids? You should, make them void of self-esteem. You should beat them up, make them feel down, make them feel low. Do you think that's what we should really do? What do you guys in
Before
the chat think? Anybody?
who were children as well, did your parents have hold that belief system that I'm going to break you before you go out in the world and they break you? I'm going to show you dishonesty and you know transgression and punishment. I'm going to show you all these things before you got in the world, and they show you. Is that the modus operandi of the parents that you had or the Black mother that you had?
I don't really know because I know my mom, she didn't put me down. My wife did. She said, "Damn, you can't." My wife definitely. She showed my kids nothing but love, and she made them feel very accepted, and she made them feel they had agency. For example, she
Yeah.
created things in which they could do together. They could play together. I remember last night, Eve, she was talking about the fact that with her children, you play with them. And my wife used to play games with my kids. She would play with them. She would have them solve riddles. She would have them do different things that made them become
Mhm.
very cognitive and think about stuff. Because see, it's like Nellie Fuller
Yeah.
said that we should be about doing constructive things instead of doing things
Hmm.
negative. TW said TW said, if you want to drive a racist man, racist woman insane, do this experiment. Go to the park and read a book. They hate when blacks are doing something constructive. Is that a
I
fact? You
say
better
that's
believe it's a
100
fact.
facts.
And this happens to
Facts.
me too when I'm on a plane. Because every year I ride the plane about 2 or 3 times a year. And this happens to me too, TW. When I travel by airplane and have my book on the right book out, the white person sitting next to me always wants to know what I'm reading and why. Nosy as hell, yeah. And you say, what do you care? Because see, the book I'm reading is probably a book that you wouldn't want to read. Because the book that I'm reading
Mm,
is a book in a sense that you wouldn't find out so important anyway. But we have so many things, and when they talk about the slave traumatic stress syndrome, in a way that's true is false, and it's false. Let me explain to you.
mm,
Many of us suffer from traumatic slave syndrome, but after the Civil War, black people still tried to be productive. Black people still, in a sense, try to move up, start their own businesses and things like that. So we do have this pressure. It's always in our memory. You can't take this. You can't take this away from our memory, and because you can't take this away from our memory, it's always something out there that may drive you to that extent. But see, in terms, I think of moms, and see, you guys have always heard me talk about Bakhet's book. I brought it up many times because it helped me. It helped me resolve because see, Bakhet has a lot of writing exercise in her books. And see, I'm a cognitivist. And what a cognitivist is a person who feels that you should think your way out of stuff. I always taught from the perspective that my students could learn by practicing. So I wanted my kids to produce stuff by practicing. And what I found from Bakhet's book is that those exercises allowed me to think about those things that I took for granted when I was younger. And maybe understand that, hey, maybe, I always knew my mom loved me, but I just felt, why couldn't she tell me? I knew my grandmother loved me, but they could never say those words. My wife, she said all the time. I told my kids I love you. Kiss them on the cheek with with their lazy asses. But anyway, that's another story. But you always love your kids. Joan Caramonte, what she says, part of the issue is a residue from slavery. Black women were not able or feared bonding with their children because they could be sold away at any time. It became a form of psychological defense. You're absolutely correct. But then,
Absolutely.
I did a thing once. I was doing a show for Sister Shanice, so I had to read. So I was reading about one of the famous slaves over there, and what she said is that, and when she talked about her mom and that experience and the fact that they could be sold, it still seemed that some moms still tried to become intimate with their children. Some moms still tried to be vulnerable. For example, I can't remember the name of this lady, but she would always take her children and she would have them all pray together, and they would always pray that wherever their other brothers and sisters were, that they were safe, that they were happy, and that they were progressing. So in a way, we always had this sentiment. And even if you remember after slavery, many of the slave people would travel across the United States, trying to find their people, trying to find those people that they had
the children.
That's right, their children and their loved ones, and some of them did find them. But the point is this: is that I'm going to tell you guys something. You do not understand. You do not understand, in a sense, that a woman is wonderful. Woman, the womb. That means she creates. And I believe that that whatever your woman wants you to have, you're going to get it. I believe that I've been a success in life. Yeah, my wife, she never was jealous of any woman on the planet, but she hated my books. She hated my books. but she always wanted me to write. She always wanted me to talk about our people. She always loved
the real competition.
Me to do the stuff, the research, but don't bring that shit to her. Because the thing is this, is that, a woman who cares about you is selfish. And a man who cares about a woman should be selfish also, you see. But the point is this, is that you still have to sometimes sacrifice, time, to maybe devote to research, devote with sharing, And the thing is this, is that it's kind of hard because, you see, we take for granted. We take for granted that people are always going to be here, And the thing is this, is that people, their loved one is not always going to be here. They're not always going to be around, And like Dorvell said, and he said, the new age of parenting, talk to your child. Don't spank. Look at the horrible condition we are in now. Most of the old ways are the best ways. In a way, you're absolutely correct, Dorel, but it's also complicated. It's also very complicated. Sometimes your kids will do stuff because they want you to spank. What do you think? Do you think it's that easy, Bakhet?
I'm going to disagree with you there, and I'm going to pull the receipts. Patton, Patton, 2017. It's a review of Freire and his pedagogy. where he, in certain terms, says that there is no record of using physical discipline in that African Americans specifically hit their children as a direct result of enslavement. That we have come to use physical discipline speaks back to that question that I was talking about. That yes, you want to jolt your child into understanding the consequences and the seriousness of being Black in that society. So, in effect, do we seek to break our children before society does? Do we seek to give them that beat down, to to degrade mentally, so that when the time comes, that they're able to practice the thing we call resilience, and they're able to practice this, sort of duck off the water's back attitude of, I've already been diminished at home, so when I go out into the world, I know how to deal with it. But no, I personally, I'm not down with the whole, what is it, woke parenting or any of that other stuff, any of the trends. I believe that as an adult, it is my job, with the superior brain power and the experience and the strength, to find a way to influence a child's behavior rather than control it. Of course, when we're talking about a kid running out into the street after a ball in front of a car, that's a whole different scenario. But on the day to day, 9 out of 10 times, I'm of the opinion that we resort to physical violence because we just really don't have the time to sit down and attempt to influence a child's thinking or a toddler's thinking, and to use our words, to use emotional fluency, to talk about what they're experiencing, what we're feeling in our own frustration and anger, to use words and to influence a child's behavior. It takes time. It takes too much time for most parents. So we seek control, and that's usually physical domination. Or for a lot of my sisters, it is verbal domination. So no, I kind of shy away from that idea that, we've got to break our children before they go into the world, and then we're going to teach them resilience as an afterthought.
But I really, I was wondering when I was younger, was I really preparing my kids for the world? Because yeah,
Mhm.
I told my sons, first thing, I hold my hands up, hit my hands. Then I'd say, then I'll
Right,
say, then I'll say, block. I told him how to block first, and then I told him
right.
how to get that uppercut. Then my other son, he wanted to do the charging. But the thing is, this is that I felt in a way though. At the same time, I taught them how to fight. I taught them how to defend themselves. I also
Mhm.
felt that I had taught them that everybody was nice, and that you should try to judge people by
Mm,
their behavior, and that some people will be kind of harsh, but in a sense, you should go off the fact that they were basically nice people. And I wondered, was I sending them out into the world with a mistaken idea about people? And I don't think it doesn't seem as though I'm the only one, because Darlene next, what did she say? She says the mistake parents made was not telling us the whole truth and preparing us for it. I think that's
I
very important.
agree.
But then at the same time, what is the truth? What is the truth? And then TW says, my mother and father did so much for me when I was young, but I did not fully understand it at the time. I get I get it now. Both of my parents have passed, but I wish I could go back and thank them. Yeah, in a way you do, but they did their job. They did their job, and their job was to prepare you. Because see, me and my wife, we used to talk about the fact is that her mother, I think she got it from her experience, because she felt her mother wanted to dominate and control her, and
Hmm.
so through conversation, she began to translate to me the idea that your child is not yours. Your child is temporary.
Object,
Your child is
not an
temporary.
object.
That's right. A
Hmm.
man or a woman is going to take your child from you. So you should be
Yeah.
prepared. You should be prepared to allow them to understand that you're not going to keep them here. You're not going to hold them down. So when they get ready to move, I mean, I didn't tell my kids, when you get 18, a lot of people say, your parents are cool because my mom told me to get out when I was 18 and I had to go do this, blah blah blah. But
That's
but your
right.
mom, your mom, and they would tell my kids, your mom and dad allow y'all to stay until y'all get ready to go. And that's the way I think it should. I mean, that's what I saw with white folks. White folks don't keep their
Yeah.
kids out at 18. Their kid is still around by the
No.
time they graduate from college. Get on your feet, then move. You couldn't.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, you couldn't even get a good job unless you was 19 or 20. You
Mm,
couldn't even get in a union. And I think this whole
right.
idea is complicated. It's very complicated because see, when you talked about parenting, it's not in the sense that people are avoiding it. I think a lot of parents don't want to take the time to have a
Yes.
cognitive approach to their child. Like
Yes.
I used to tell
Yeah.
parents, sometimes people say, Dr. Winters, you can whip Johnny or you can whip Fred. I said, I don't want to whip your child. I didn't want to whip my own child. I had to whip him because I felt it was to help them to grow up. But I said, you're their mother. I said, as a mother, you're the most precious thing to your boy. I don't know about girls now, but I know about boys. I said, you're the most precious thing to your boy. And so then, instead of trying to spank them or punishing them, because taking away the computer don't computer and playing games, that doesn't really work out because eventually you're going to let them get back on it. But I said, what you need to do
Mm,
is that the worst thing that can happen to a child is to see their mother cry. The worst thing that can happen to a child is to see their mother sad. And I said, what
true.
you need to do to be able to really get your child is to tell them, this hurts me. I can't take this. Why are you doing this to me? Make them talk to you. Take the time and say, why are you doing this to me? I'm not doing anything. I swear I ain't doing nothing. I swear on granny. See, there you go swearing. But why are you doing this to me? But see, as you said, Bakhet, we have to talk to our children. We had to relate to them.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But I also think, because there's a fine line there. Of course, it's a biological imperative that a child cares about the well-being of their mother, boy and girl, because that is your survival. That is where you get food and shelter and resources from. But I think also another aspect of the Black mother wound, a lot of it's being painted as narcissism today. That's the catchword. But there is a level of resistance strategies that I think that we as Black of, and this speaks back to what Joan was talking about with the epigenetic influence, the things that have that in our environment that changed our behavior, our cognitive processes. The idea of manipulating a child is a big risk. Uh, it's something that I think that we as Black women have to be very careful about. And this goes to, the young women that may speak negatively about the father or other family members, or not provide the entire story, or change pieces of the story and the truth that prepare that child for life. The thing is that a lot of those behaviors that Black women are charged with, manipulation, denial, justification, gaslighting, behaviors that people are that Black men are complaining about, that children are complaining about, and their parents. A lot of these things were resistance strategies. These are the things that Black women could use to keep themselves safe and their children safe. So lying about pregnancy was a way not to go to work and to take care of your children. Lying about losing a baby, lying about, being a victim or being sad or being hurt. Those are things that we as Black women, those were our tools. Men had different set of tools. They could, drop something on their foot and say they can't work. But for a
And we
woman, it
couldn't.
all
We
became
couldn't. It hurt.
right. Right. It all became sort of a cognitive battle to come up with behaviors and attitudes in order to resist our enslavers. So it may be easy for us to reach into that bag of trick. It may even be epigenetically comfortable to use manipulation or gaslighting or half truths or any of those types of behaviors um, to get our needs met. But I identify those things as part of the Black mother wound, and I would encourage my sisters to, take the step toward that highest frequency that they can find and take the time to build relationships that don't require resistance strategies, don't require manipulation, don't require gaslighting, lying, victimization, all that type of behavior, all of that very low frequency behavior. The last thing that we want to do is mimic that and model that in front of children. We don't want to teach children to use manipulation to meet their needs.
Darlene says that I talk to my child all the time, but it's important not to cuddle them. It's true, but what is cuddling?
Mm,
We don't know. It's very hard. And then Creaso Jr. said, my dad went too far. I think he
yeah.
literally tried to break me as a child. He was
Yes.
cold-hearted and angry. The house felt
Yeah.
like jail. Now I believe he was experiencing the genetic memory of slavery. And you know that could
That's
be
right.
it. That could be it. But again, it's also important to remember what Joan tells us. And what does she say? And this is very important. Let's not forget this. We never lost our human qualities, despite being indoctrinated by beasts.
Go
Family will
on,
always be
Joan.
important because we value relationships with others, while second frequency
Yes.
values objectification of others. This is so
Yes.
important. But see, we had to remember these things. We had to remember these things and understand that parenting is not as easy. You know, back in the early 2000s, the biggest thing in a sense among some of my students, I used to teach the graduate courses. I used to teach, before the students could get their master's degree in education and psychology counseling. They had to take my research course, and so a lot of the students were coming in, and the parents were upset because their kids wasn't doing everything that they felt that they should, that they felt they had taught them. And I would try to tell them, I said that your child is not yours, but at the same time,
Mm,
sometimes in a sense, your child will come back. You see, like one of my
yes.
sons, he was he when he was a kid, he made sure to never get whoopings. He was always a student. Then one day, he was having a family get together, so he drove up in his car, and I happened to be on the front porch. So I walked over to his car. The window came down, and all this marijuana smoke came out. I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I didn't smoke, I didn't drink." But the point is, this is that you know he's still in a. He hadn't forgot what I taught him, but he had to be him. And was it my
Yeah.
right? Was it my right to destroy his feelings and doing what he wanted? But Dorvell, this is you have a right, and this is very important. He says, I disagree with the white man assessment. Correct discipline is not abusive. Proper discipline includes corporal punishment and not abuse. Males are afraid of male discipline. In a way, it is, but I remember when I was talking to my wife, and I've told this story many times, and I'm going to tell it again. And I was, because it looked like when I was growing up, my mom and dad, they used to enjoy trying to find the right belts to whoop our ass. And so then I was talking to my wife and said, yeah, I said that, when they act up, this is when my kids were they were babies. I said, when they act up, I'm gonna get a belt and I'm gonna whip them with an ironing cord and I'm gonna
Mm,
let them know that they had to be in a sense disciplined. My wife said, whose kids are you gonna whip with an ironing cord? I said, I'm gonna whip our kids with an iron. I said, not my kid. You're not gonna whip my kid with an ironing cord. I said, that's my kid too. See, but the point
mhm,
is this is
mm,
that she had set limits on what I had to do. She said,
mhm,
Clyde, this is what you do. You can discipline them, but you can only discipline them up to when they get 14. After they get
mhm.
14, after they get 14, you had to learn to talk to your children. And I'm so glad she told me that because
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
today, lately, two of my sons, they call me before the show. I hated before the show because on Thursdays because then I had to get off in a while. But then we talk a little bit, and then today I had another son on, so it was three. It was three sons. And the thing is, this is
Mhm.
that but they wouldn't probably be talking to me if I wouldn't have did what my wife said. If I wouldn't
That's
have
right.
tried to build up a relationship in which we could communicate.
Mhm.
I
Or
think
if you,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I was just going to say, or if you had decided to parent through fear, because at
Yeah,
the end of the day, when we're talking about corporal punishment and discipline and all those things, that's not how you teach discipline. You
you're
don't
not
teach a 25-year-old to sit down and study for the LSATs by beating them. You don't, that's not what that translates to in adult behavior. Discipline. When we talk about the principle of discipline, that's not what that is. You don't teach it. What you're doing is controlling the child's behavior through physical abuse. I believe it's abuse. But the thing is that had you chosen to build your relationship with your and the idea that you are in a hierarchy where you physically dominate them and that they should fear you, um, how does that translate into relating to them as adults? Now
Right.
what do they do now? You're not bigger than them. You can't beat them. They're not going to allow it. They have children of their own.
Yeah.
So what is the relationship then if you start off with fear and corporal discipline? What is it that you're teaching? What's left after you finish that? Because it'll have to end someday. The child grows.
And it's going
So
to end
that I don't,
someday, you know.
yeah, fear is not a solid plan for child development. I don't believe.
Mhm. You know, Darling X said, I believe that too. My child is not mine. I'm here to raise him to
Mm-hmm.
my best ability. That's true. That's all that you can do, you know.
Sure.
It's
Yes.
very important that we understand this. TW, you have some very good comments. Question for Professor Bakhet and Dr. Winters. Do you think black families handle mental illness, suicide differently than with white families? Historically, black families
Mm.
just buried a suicide. I don't know. I never met anybody. I never met anybody who had, I'm sorry to say, I never met anybody who committed suicide. But when we had this teacher, you know, and when she taught third grade, and she had 3 students who committed suicide in third grade, black children. I
Mm.
found that very
Wow.
interesting. What do you think, Bakhet? I haven't never been
I do
suicide.
think there's a difference. I do think there's a difference in the way that it's handled or regarded in the black community versus the white community. And it's interesting that that might be very telling in a way about emotional fluency in the black community or emotional intelligence in the black community and how that plays into PTSS. When we talk about suicide in the white community, it's often viewed as a great loss, a missed opportunity. There's mourning involved. There's a lot of reflection, a lot of critical reflection on the behavior of the people around that person. You know, this sort of idea of let's workshop and figure out what went wrong, and how we were deficient in preventing a suicide. In our community, I think that we have a much more prolific experience with suicide than the white settler community does, at least in North America. And I actually start off the book talking about this. I talk about Margaret Garner, the slave Peggy, that some of you might be familiar with. And you can research this on Google. And most people remember the Beloved film when the enslaved woman gets captured and she swings the baby against the wall by the legs to kill the baby. Well, Peggy, the slave, was a real woman. Her name was Margaret Garner. She was accused regularly of being insolent, and Peggy escaped. And when the enslavers caught up to her, she chose to end her children's lives, or one of her daughters, 2 of her daughters' lives, I believe, instead of having them re-enter slavery. And this turns out to be a big deal in terms of the American legal system, because she couldn't go to jail because she killed a black child, and black people were not humans that you could legally murder. So she didn't really commit a crime by murdering her own child. But it begs the question of our relationship, or black motherhood, and the relationship with sparing a child or killing or dispatching a child so that they could avoid enslavement. So if we look at the epigenetic outcome of that and the historical outcome of that, and the way that the black mother is the core of the black family and black community, our relationship with moving on to the afterlife and our epigenetic memory of our ancestors, I think we behave very differently around suicide. And I think that we don't necessarily view it in the realm of emotional intelligence or affection or mourning or impact on us as a black community or black families. I believe I think it's much deeper, and that's a pretty extensive dialogue. But just off the top of my head, I would look at Margaret Garner and Peggy and the choice to end her children's lives rather than have them be enslaved. And I think that's a really interesting thing um, to talk about when we talk about the black mother wound and black femininity in general. I'd be interested to know how the sisters in the audience feel about that. Can they relate to that? Can they relate to, you know, dispatching a child or having a child that dispatches themselves versus dealing with bondage? Is that something that you can relate to, or does that just seem?
I think it's very complicated because my kids always taught them. I always taught them. I said that if you commit suicide, it's fine if you can't take it. But I said you made a contract with God, and I said if you commit suicide, you're just going to come back and relive it. So if I was you, I wouldn't do it. But that was that. And I think it's very important to understand that that's the way it is. That's what I feel. I feel I had to go back. Darlene X, so this is serious. And what she says is this. My father used to talk to me like he wanted to tear down my self-esteem. He said things to me I would never say to my own child. Worthless was how he described me. A lot of times people are just they have so much hate in them. They have so much discord because of the fact that they don't really want to respect people. But all was not lost, And and what did Darlene tell us? She said that she tells us if it wasn't for my mother, I'd probably be in an asylum today. And that's the important point, is that it has to be too. Like I found I don't know. My sons are going to look at this, and you better not call me tomorrow, but I'm going to tell on you guys. My sons do not like to spank their children. Their wives have to do the discipline.
Right on. Right on.
And the point is this, is that I said, damn, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? You're supposed to take control, but no, that's the way it is, But it's very important. I think that at the same time, we have to understand it. And I think that Doriel, I think you got something here. What does he say? Is fear the road to respect, or is respect the road to fear? I don't think you can. I don't think respect and fear can have any relationship. I really think in a sense is that because we didn't respect our masters, just like people. A lot of people, they believe, because we were taught that it was 3 slave rebellions, and we were taught that these were the old and come. No, it was 250 slave rebellions. They didn't rape every black
day,
woman.
all day.
That's right.
Yeah.
They didn't rape every black woman, because some black women you rape, they put glass in your drinks, or glass in your food. They burned your house down. But again, we're getting close to 2 hours. Bakhet, did you want to say something? Your final comments?
Just I hope the family finds use and healing in the book. If you know a Black mother, love a Black mother, or know somebody who does, please check out the book. More than anything, I want to leave you with the thought that Black trauma is not Black culture. We see so much on social media, in the films, on the television, so much behavior on Cat Williams' Good Internet right now with Monique and her son. And there's so much going on where we're looking at Black mothers and we're talking about it, and people choosing not to have children. For the most part, just let's be careful about what we call Black culture. A lot of it is Black trauma. It's not funny when it comes to caricatures of Black women as mothers being violent or, ignorant or trying to fight with their children and all that type of stuff. That's not Black culture. And it's not what we come from. And there has definitely been an impact since we moved into proximity, into bondage. And it's up to each and every one of us, male, female, Black daughters, Black sons, Black mothers, Black fathers, to take the journey in our own personal lives to reconnect with the Black Mama Goddess, however that looks in our life, but to take the time to reflect, to sit down, to have the dialogue, to figure out what we believe about motherhood, about Black motherhood, about our sisters, about our aunts, and look at what they come from. And look at what is them and what is the trauma of building them and developing who they are. And have compassion for each other and love each other. Cut each other some slack, cut ourselves some slack. Those would be my big words of wisdom.
I think it's important, and we should cut each other slack. Thank you, Bakhet, for coming on the show. And I hope our family that. Oh, hey, we need to know this. I know people kept saying, "Who is this Bakhet? Who is this Dr. Winters all the time? Why does he say that she helped his life?" Now you know, and that buy her book, support her, and thank you so much, Bakhet, for taking the time to come on the show. And if you want to talk about something else, then one day just let me know, and we'll get things popping and try to get it started. Again,
All
family, you
right,
guys
I
have a good
will.
evening. Have a good evening. Take care.
Blessings.
Bye
Blessings.
bye.
Good health, family.